I'm going to talk about air monitoring in Benicia, air quality, what and how, air monitors, what they do and where they are, air quality and health. And why I went into this is that after listening last year in City Council to hearings on an industrial safety ordinance, it appeared to me that many people, including myself, may not fully understand the issue of air quality as it relates to health and the environment. So further, as the quality of our air has been significantly diminished with the California wildfires, air quality is something that we all must understand. So this, I'm going to take you at the 52,000-foot level. Okay, air quality, what and how. Air quality is the measurement of identified pollutants in the air we breathe. There are two major pollutant categories measured: criteria pollutants and toxic pollutants. The 6 criteria pollutants measured are particulate matter, ground level ozone, carbon monoxide, sulfur oxide, nitrogen oxides, and lead. There are 187 identified toxic pollutants. Now, AirWatch Bay Area has highlighted 7 that it monitors, which are benzene, black carbon, ethyl benzene, hydrogen sulfide, nitrogen oxide, toluene, xylene. And AirWatch Bay Area also monitors particulate matter 2.5 and sulfur dioxide. Now, the state of California has higher criteria standards for health and environmental safety than does the Environmental Protection Agency, as indicated in the Air Quality Index, or AQI. The National Ambient Air Quality Standards, NAAQS, of the Environmental Protection Agency sets the allowable limits based on health. And they have quite a rigorous standard-setting protocol that it follows. The Air Quality Index provides daily readings. It measures up to 5 of the criteria pollutants, excluding lead, and sets the index on the single pollutant with the highest index value of that day. I'll now run through some of the pollutants, and we'll start with particulate matter. That cable on the left is a human hair. And note the size of particulate matter measured against a human hair, which is 60 microns in diameter. So PM10 is 1/6 of 60 microns. PM 2.5 is 1/24 of 60 microns. Particulate matter is measured by the number of pollutant in a microgram. That's 1/1,000,000th of a gram per cubic meter of air. And note that I put the measurements used by CARB and the NAAQS or EPA, so you can see the differences. Not that you can read it at that distance, but. Sulfur dioxide is measured by the parts of the pollutant per million parts of air, and then so on. You can just go through ozone, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, carbon monoxide. Air monitors. Okay, that's air quality, got it? Okay, air monitors. What do they do and where are they located? We measure the air because what we breathe affects our health and environment. Health effects includes decreased lung function, aggravation of respiratory and cardiovascular diseases, increased asthma incidence and severities. The Bay Area Air Quality District defines monitors as stationary devices that measure ambient air, and ambient air is the air that we breathe, that comply with national standards and are regularly checked. The monitors are regularly checked for accuracy. Monitors measure criteria pollutants and toxic pollutants like particulate matter, nitrogen oxide, carbon monoxide, hydrogen sulfide, etc. Monitors have limitations. For example, they can't determine the source of any specific pollutant. There are many types of monitors. There are temporary, personal, mobile, and trailers, which are considered to be monitoring stations. And Kathy Carriage will talk about the new Benicia Community Air Monitoring Program trailer. A California Air Resources Board 2017 draft report shows the diagram of air monitoring protection levels for refineries. Everything inside the shaded area is the refinery's responsibility for monitoring. And outside the circle of the fence line are community monitors and monitoring stations consisting of fixed, portable, mobile, and optical remote sensors. That's the ideal. How many do we have in Benicia? We're very limited right now, 0. Argus Scientific, a noted firm in air monitoring, presented the following in a webinar a couple years ago. The three components of a fence line and community monitoring program are first, open path fence line monitors at the refinery. Second, community monitors made of point samplers. And third, an information system with data integrated into real-time, user-friendly public website. The next slide indicates the limitations to fence line systems. And note that Valero is using a Century MS ultraviolet system measuring BTEX. And BTEX is, you can see in the bottom right, it's benzene, toluene, ethylbenzene, and xylene. Equipment needs to respond to detection levels. You can't read this. There will be no test on it. I'm guaranteeing you that. But each of these indicate specifics for each kind of chemical measured or pollutant. So monitoring sensors have required detection limits and ranges for each pollutant, and there are many types of monitors available. Now this next slide is from something I was able to find on the EPA website. It's no longer listed, and they have nothing more current, but this is a list of EPA monitors that were available then. Well, you can't just plunk and monitor or monitoring system anywhere. You must consider, and this is the next slide, the location, the pollutant type and concentrations, the wind and atmospheric conditions, and the sensor response times. This next slide shows the California Air Resources Board and Air District monitors. And if you note at the very top in the box, there are like 3 right now in Solano County. And that's questionable because you can also look at airnow.gov and they show one in Fairfield. In the next slide, and this will animate if you hit the button, they're little tiny arrows from Windfinder that shows the direction. It's probably not dark enough to see it, that most of our wind comes in the summer from the west. These are the westerlies. If you hit the next slide, then click on, it's going to show, keep going, there you go. So, and one more, okay. Those 2 arrows, one in Concord and the monitor on Tuolumne Street in Vallejo, are the 2 monitors that measure Benicia, California air quality. And that's been that way for a long time. And here, the next slide, we should, and I think the wind blows on this one, so you can go, there we go. This I found today, and this is actually from a recent document that shows the 2018 locations of all the Air District monitors. And SLAMs are state or local air monitoring stations, and SPMs are special purpose monitors. And again, note how many we have there in Benicia. It's 0 right now. And the next slide, this is images taken from a Valero presentation to the Benicia City Council last year showing their monitors. And if you look where the pink line is, that's the new fence line. And where all the yellow monitors are, that kind of gives you the circle of the refinery. So inside the refinery, monitoring data is not available in real time to the public. And then the next, these 2 slides indicate are from Valero's input to the Air District on fence line monitoring. And I'm just going to read the quote from there. It says, note that open path measurements cannot distinguish between a widely dispersed, and go to the next slide if you would, Jack, low concentration plume and a narrow high concentration plume. They detect average concentrations across the entire distance from transmitter to detector. So there's a variance in terms of what's available. And this next slide shows the Benicia Refinery Monitors.org. This is Valero's new online website, and it has the indicators there are in the gray boxes are where their monitors are located, and you can see the pull down box above where it says what the Valero accessible monitors measure, showing what they measure. And you'll note that something like particulate matter is not measured there. Okay, what number are we on here? Okay, 34. AirWatch Bay Area did a monitoring analysis of the 2016-2017 data from the Chevron and Richmond, California, both the Chevron monitors and the community monitors. If you'll note the highlighted yellow ellipse for the dangerous pollutant toluene, the fence line and community monitors both detected toluene only 0.21% of the time of thousands of readings. There are notable differences in the accuracy of reporting between fence line and community monitors, as the community monitors reported the toxic emission over 14% of the time. So in the next slide, we Benicians want to know what's in the air, and this map shows residential purchased particulate air monitors in Benicia called Purple Air, and you can go to purpleair.com, put our zip code in, and you can get the current readings for particulate matter 2.5. And lest we forget in the next slide, this is what it looked like on November 11th, 2018 with the campfires burning. Okay, that's air monitors. All right, air quality and health. I don't know if you can read the caption. Sure, the EPA deregulations hit the fashion industry hard, but they made up for it in the hazmat suit boom. What are the health effects for criterion toxic pollutants? Particulate matter, ground level ozone, carbon monoxide, sulfur oxide, nitrogen oxide, lead, benzene, black carbon, ethyl benzene, hydrogen sulfide, toluene, and xylene. Starting with ozone. Ozone irritates airways. The symptoms are cough, sore or scratchy throat, and asthmatic symptoms. These studies found that the increases in ozone resulted in an 83% increase in school absences. Particulate deposition from particulate matter shows that PM10 deposit in the upper respiratory tract, and particulate matter like PM2.5 are inhalable and penetrate the lungs. Particulate matter smaller than 0.1 may enter the bloodstream directly. Sensitive groups for particulate matter are people with, and you may recognize yourself in one of these categories, people with cardiovascular disease, lung disease, older adults, children, and those in a lower socioeconomic group. Carbon monoxide exposure, and actually the heart will beat if you hit the next slide there. There you go. Reduces the capacity of the blood to carry oxygen, thereby decreasing the supply of oxygen to the tissues and organs such as the heart. Sulfur dioxide affects people with asthma. Short-term exposure is linked to respiratory symptoms in children and are often related to ER visits and hospitalizations, particularly for children and older adults. Nitrogen dioxide exposure results in respiratory symptoms, especially among asthmatic children. And under the toxic pollutants, the toxic pollutant benzene causes eye and skin irritation, headaches, dizziness, and longer exposure can cause bone marrow damage and blood diseases like leukemia. Black carbon is related to asthma attacks and problems with heart and blood vessels. Everybody feeling okay right now? Ethyl benzene at short but high levels can lead to eye and throat irritation and dizziness. Long-term exposure can cause kidney and inner ear damage. Hydrogen sulfide produces a rotten egg smell, and short-term effects include nausea, watering eyes, headaches, sleeplessness, breathing problems, digestive upset, and tiredness. Toluene exposure can result in irritation of the eyes and nose, confusion, headache, anxiety, dizziness, and insomnia, and more serious effects can include kidney and liver damage, and it may be linked to infertility. And finally, xylene exposure can cause headaches, lack of coordination, confusion, and dizziness. The Bay Area Air Quality Management District's May 2016 Planning Healthy Places Guidebook includes Benicia for implementing best practices to reduce exposure. Now look at Benicia's demographics. 22% of Benicia's population is in a sensitive receptors category. That's children and mature adults. At the next slide, note at the bottom left, the locations of schools and daycare centers within 2.5 miles of Valero. And here are the most recent data available from the 2017 criteria and toxic pollutant emissions data for Valero. I have an asterisk by sulfur dioxide because of the 2017 incident, which resulted in 74,000 pounds of sulfur dioxide, which alone equals 34 metric tons. So you can see the report is 0.3 metric tons. I don't know. I'm going to have somebody, our mayor is going to look at that for me. Okay. And this is, there's more current data, I'm happy to say, in Solano County. I didn't have time to pull it, but this is from 2011, 2013, for things that could be linked to, but we don't have a direct cause for diabetes, heart disease, respiratory health, and asthma, mortality, and asthma rates. And then finally, note the difference between Solano County and the state of California prevalence of asthma. 14% versus 22%. And while cancer takes a long time to develop, that's the next slide, and is hard to correlate to toxic emissions, a national toxic assessment report from 1999 shows Benicia is prone to high cancer risk from pollution. And finally, after learning all of this, my attention personally has moved to, it's going to take a long time for us to reduce toxic emissions. So I think our immediate focus needs to be on health hazard prevention. And if you're looking for air purifiers for home, work, or school, they need to filter air to at least 0.3 microns. Thank you very much.
Hydrocarbons and water in it. It burns anyway. The coke fines probably know what that is. It's crushed. And you can see it looks a lot like coal. Calcined coke, very little of it gets calcined, but there, for example, Phillips 66 along Highway 4, you might have seen something that looks something like that next to the big smokestacks. That's a coke calciner. They cook it, really pollution intensive. Most of it gets used for graphite. And then there are some other terms that we'll get back to in a second. Next. It's a byproduct, right? Who's thought about how you make something that looks like gasoline out of something that looks like motor oil or tar, right? The petroleum, the crude, it's hydrocarbon. It's hydrogen and carbon. The heavier, denser, thicker stuff, less hydrogen, more carbon, carbon-carbon bonds. Does anybody really want me to go into the chemistry? A little bit? Somebody say a little bit? I can. So what's happening here is between sort of conventional crude, that's the line on the top, and low quality, heavy, thick, you could think of it as tar sands or California heavy. A whole bunch of it has to go through the more aggressive processing, so you see the much bigger box at the bottom. That's this refinery and most refineries in California. And in that aggressive processing, you take the oil, you boil it, the stuff that just won't even boil. Then you boil it in a vacuum distillation. And then you break those carbon-carbon bonds either by really severe injection of hydrogen that has to be made, also a pollution-intensive process, or by heat and pressure and sometimes a catalyst taking out the carbon. That carbon that gets taken out, most of it bonds with other carbon to form petcoke. And so, of course, the heavier the oil, the more intensive the refinery set up to process, and processes bigger. The bigger this box, the more of that stuff there's going to be, and the cracking, breaking those carbon bonds, that's done in a way that takes carbon out. That's what creates the petcoke. There's a couple of ways, main ways that happens. Next slide. And by the way, Valero here does both of these. Catalytic cracking. In catalytic cracking, it makes a lot of gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, really fast, but it needs the catalyst to be active, and the catalyst gets coked up really fast, so that it's constantly burning the coke off. Chevron's cat cracker in Richmond burns somewhere between 650 and 900 tons of pet coke every day. And I don't know how many tons exactly Valero's a little bit less big cat cracker burns, but it's a lot. And so this, of course, is burned inside the refinery. It's called catalyst coke. That's what that term means. Next. And then coking. Valero has a coker. It's a fluidized coker. It's not exactly like this one from Phillips. The coking process, a lot of heat for a really long time, and it's being used to boost the gasoline, diesel, jet fuel production, the stuff they can sell for a lot of money. It's named after one of its major byproducts, coke. And these coking processes, the coke exits the process unit, so it may be sold by the refinery. That's what market coke means. So those are the terms. Next. I said that refining dirtier, heavier oil makes more of this stuff. It's bad and polluting for a lot of reasons. But this is nationwide data since 1999. And you can see that the denser, the heavier, the higher specific gravity, the crude feed, the higher the percentage of the crude that gets made by the refinery into petcoke. It's pretty dramatic, and it follows the line pretty close, considering all the things that go on in refineries. But anybody want to guess where the West Coast refining dots are? Each of those little blue dots is a year, an average of a year for a whole refining fleet somewhere in the country. Is West Coast as a whole. It's a little bit below the line, but it's still, about the second worst. Where's California? Any guesses?
The top.
Yeah, top. You're right, at the top. On average, the heaviest crude feed, 7–8% of the crude by volume becomes petcoke. And of course, California is part of the West Coast, so you can see where the West Coast as a whole, with refineries in Alaska that are topping off the better part of the crude, and it's a little below the line, but it's raised up by the high side from California. So just to give you a sense of what those data mean. So that's where it comes from, how it's produced, what the cause of it is. Really lucrative refining of cheap, dirty crude to make expensive fuels. Next slide. How much of it? Where does it go? So this is good West Coast data from the US EIA. And 2017, you can see an awful lot. Everybody can read that? Yeah, and so even though it's only 6–7% of the crude, so much crude's being refined. Tens of millions of cubic meters, tens of millions of tons per year. And most of that, a lot of it gets used on the West Coast in refineries and outside refineries, but most of it's being exported. You probably noticed that petcoke looks a lot like coal. Generally, burns as dirty as coal in every way. Climate, toxics, criteria pollutants. And as weak as I believe our air quality requirements are here now, they're weaker in other places. This stuff's a byproduct. Costs them money if they have to landfill it. They export it. Maybe they might even sell it at a loss in some cases, I don't know. But it's mostly getting exported. What isn't being used in refineries, and it's being exported mostly to be burned in smelters, cement plants, power plants, who basically can substitute it for coal, right? So that's how much. Next slide. And the trends. This again is West Coast. Petcoke is the dark gray. It's increasing slightly. It's the largest share of the exports and has been for the last decade or more. It's increasing slightly because this is a byproduct of making money on engine fuels. So as the gasoline, diesel, especially the diesel, but the gasoline, diesel and jet fuel exports have increased. We're using less oil on the West Coast. We have been since 2012 on a decadal basis. It's a real trend. They export more, and they pollute more here because of that, and they make a bit more petcoke. Next slide. So, why do we care? I think that, thank you for your questions earlier. The way I would look at it is like, you know, there are a few variables. One of them that you're talking about is like, how much am I exposed? How much is getting to my house? How much is getting to my community? But for a given amount of this exposure, there are a couple factors. First of all, whether it's blown out in the wind or blown out of the refinery during the upset that happened a couple weeks ago, or whether it's burned, the emissions from petcoke will always include a lot of particulate matter. What kind matters? PM10, 10 microns, like we just learned, upper respiratory tract. PM 2.5, lower respiratory tract. It does get lodged, it builds up, it clears more slowly. You're exposed to it for longer. And around 2.5 and smaller, the so-called ultrafines, which can be really tiny, 1 micron, 1/10 of a micron. When you get into that range, they get into the bloodstream, they cross the cell barriers into your cells. It even goes through if you breathe it in through your nose, it'll get into your brain. It crosses the blood-brain barrier. So particle size matters for that reason alone, and also because chemical composition. What is this stuff made out of? That's what the syringe is meant to convey. This is a delivery mechanism for toxic chemicals into our cells, into our bodies. That's what happens when we breathe particulate matter. And so these factors matter. Next slide. There actually is a lot of technology, if anybody wanted to spend the money on it, to measure this stuff really closely. This is from a Spanish refinery where they looked at the ultrafine particulate matter from all the stacks, and they took electromicrographs. So that's what various particulate matter looks like. And you can see that they were looking at metals in this study. So they were looking at some really tiny particles that are definitely ultrafine particulate matter. And I don't know if you can see the arrows and the chemical symbols, but various metals, a lot of earth metals, nickel, vanadium, chromium, aluminum, they're pointing out where they see them, where you see them. So that's, you know, if you could see it, that's kind of what it looks like, this delivery mechanism, right? And next slide. Some of the toxic chemicals in catalytic cracking and coking, these have all been measured by source tests from crackers, cokers, or both. And it's not all of them, but you know, take a look at that list. It's alphabetized. And this is the stuff that gloms onto refinery particulate matter and to coke burning particulate matter and to coke that just gets blown out. So that's what's being delivered. Maybe this helps to answer some of the questions from before a little bit. Next slide. Thank you, and yeah, questions.
Labor Steering Committee was honored last month, and we drafted a little bit of a history of some of the settlement agreements that were reached. Originally in 2010, as part of the settlement agreement, air monitoring, community air monitoring systems were purchased, and a trailer was purchased to store them. And a public website was developed to get that information out to the public. At some point, Valero moved the trailer. GNSC and Argos Scientific lost access to it. The website was not put online. And Marilyn will correct me if I'm making any mistakes about this, because she was actively involved in this whole process. In the recent agreement that was just reached with Valero, Valero agreed to turn those monitors back to Good Neighbor Steering Committee, and Good Neighbor Steering Committee will be forming an organization called Benicia Community Air Monitoring Program. Now, Benicia Community Air Monitoring Program, or BCAMP, was in existence before, and that was the group, those are the people that are originally trying to get these monitors up and running. There is also $460,000 set aside for the operation of this nonprofit and the operation of these community monitors. So we're in the process now of forming a nonprofit corporation for the air monitoring program. We've pretty much finalized the location for the trailer, and we'll be putting it at Russell Woodworks, and we have a fenced area there, so it'll be secure. We hope to have that trailer moved within the next few weeks, and then immediately upon it moving, we're going to be testing out the monitors. As soon as the nonprofit is set up, we'll be able to contract with an independent expert air monitoring company that will manage the raw data collection, the data analysis, running and maintaining the monitors. And a public website will be set up for this system, and it should be linked also to AirWatch Bay Area. So there should be health information on that website. One big thing is that these monitors will be recording data in real time. And another big distinction to make here is that these are ambient air monitors. So these are the community air monitors that Constance was talking about, which is different than a fence line monitoring system. Some of the chemicals which can be monitored by this, and this isn't just like one air monitor, there are a variety of monitors, are ammonia, the BTAC, benzene, black carbon, nitric oxide, ozone, PM 2.5, sulfur dioxide, toluene, toluene, I can never say it, and xylene. There will also be equipment to monitor wind speed and direction. So these monitors should allow Benicia to have a system that is independent of the refinery. We have systems like this right now in Richmond and Rodeo. We should be able to have real-time access to what is in the air. The main thing that I think we need to remember is that once we find out what's in the air, that's only the beginning of the process. That's not the end. I mean, air monitoring, you know if you're getting terrible readings that you better stay inside your house and close all the windows and doors. As Constance mentioned, we probably in Benicia should be using air filters if there's any type of event. I think ultimately we really want to make sure there are not kids out playing at recess if the refinery is emitting things. So we can take some independent action to protect ourselves from bad air. Just as importantly, of course, we need to reduce the air pollution in the first place. And as Constance says, with a community air monitoring system, you can't actually pinpoint where the pollution is coming from. We get, of course, we all know a lot of pollution from the refinery. What I think people tend to ignore is we also get a lot of pollution from automobiles. And automobiles are really one of the main sources of greenhouse gas emissions, and that's, if anybody came to the Electrify Everything thing we did last month, that's something every single one of us can do is next time you buy a car, buy an electric car. And that does help with air pollution. I wanted to just add one little thing, that there is a Purple Air Monitoring website, and that is Purple Air Monitors measure particulate matter. People have them in their homes. Constance has one, and you can go on that website and see what those air monitor readings are. And it was really interesting during this last incident with Valero to see the elevated PM readings going right across Benicia through Vallejo. And you've got lower readings on either side and then this just stripe of red where you knew the wind was just carrying those particulate matter, right through those communities. Our goal at AirWatch Bay Area is to at some point be able to put out push notifications to notify people when there is an event happening, because even though I'm really involved with this, I don't check these websites every day, and I think very few people do. What we'd really like to do is have a system set up where we can get notified if there are big releases.